That's what a lot of people say, that if you get into a cyclical lockdown, if you open up and then you're forced to shut down, and then you open up and you're forced to shut down again, then that is devastating for economic activity because it would completely destroy trust. You'd agree with that?
I think that's right, because that would suggest, take even a second lockdown. It means that you haven't been completely successful in doing in reopening, and that raises questions of if you reopen again, will you go into a third lockdown? So it does diminish credibility. That said, I don't think we have to aim for 100%. Sort of success, that is 0 cases when we open up. That's unachievable. What we have to do is manage the reopening so that when there are cases, we isolate them.
But at the heart of that management, knowing which areas are having heavy infections, which areas are not, at the heart of that process, of course, is testing. And there's a sense in India and that the testing capability is in itself limited. That we're a big country and that our ability to test like, the United States or like the European countries is comparatively limited. So how would you think about it with a sort of low level of testing? I mean, would you?
It's a great question because take the United States right now. It's ramped up to about 150,000 tests per day. But the consensus amongst experts, certainly the epidemiologists, is that to really be confident about opening up, you have to triple that to 500,000 tests a day at least. And some are talking of numbers in the millions. Well, just multiply by 4 to get 4.5 to get India's population. And you're talking about 2 million tests a day if you want to get the level of confidence that you have in the United States. And clearly, we are nowhere near that. I think we're somewhere around 25,000, 30,000 tests a day at this point. But we have to be cleverer about opening up, which means perhaps do mass testing. Take, 1,000 samples and then check in a mass way whether there is any sign of the virus in those 1,000 samples. And if you do find that, then go deeper into that particular sample and check who it might be. But this way, these are ways of testing which reduce the burden on the test infrastructure and can allow us to try and vet much more. It's in some sense less intensive, but it is cleverer. We have to be cleverer about the reopening because we simply can't wait till we have that kind of facility.
There's going to be the impact of the virus. And then after some time, there's going to be the impact on the economy, a sort of blowback impact that is going to come, real impact that is going to come a couple months from now. How do you sort of make the balance between fighting the virus right now and fighting the consequences of the virus 3 or 4 months down the line?
I think that it has to be a prioritization because our capacities and our resources are limited. Certainly our financial, fiscal resources are more limited than the West. So what we need to do is decide how do we keep this economy together so that when we reopen up, it's sort of able to walk off the sick bed and not be impaired at that point. So most immediately, I think keep people well and alive. Food is extremly important. Reach it to every place. Places our public distribution system does not go. Amartya Sen and Abhijit Banerjee and I have talked about temporary ration cards, for example, for people who don't have access. But you have to treat this pandemic as a situation which is unprecedented. We have to break norms in order to tackle what is needed, while at the same time keeping in mind that there's an overall budgetary sort of limit. There are only so many resources we have.
What do you think about the agricultural sector and the workers, migrant workers? How should we be thinking about their finances?
Well, this is where I think the efforts we've made on direct benefits transfers sort of needs to be realized at this point. All the ways we transfer to relatively poor people, we need to take a call on that. We have different ways of accessing through widows' pensions, through the Manrega rolls, and we need to say, look, these are people who don't have a job right now, who don't have a livelihood. And for the next 3 or 4 months, while this uncertainty is on, we're going to support them. But in terms of the sort of priority, keeping people alive and keeping them from having to go onto the street, in protest or looking for work is probably useful at a time of lockdown. And so I think we need to find ways of getting both money as well as food through the public distribution system to as many of these people as we can.
तो डॉक्टर राजन कितना पैसा लगेगा गरीबों की मदद करने के लिए?
तकरीबन 65,000 करोड़
60,000
और 65,000 करोड़ इतना ज्यादा नहीं है. हमारा जीडीपी 200 लाख करोड़ है और उसमें 65,000 करोड़ इतना ज्यादा नहीं है. तो कर सकते हैं और अगर ये गरीबों के लिए है और अगर उनका जिंदगी बचाने के लिए है तो करना चाहिए.
अभी तो देश संकट में है, मगर कोविड के बाद हिंदुस्तान को इस घटना से कोई फायदा भी होगा? कोई स्ट्रेटेजिक फायदा होगा? दुनिया में कोई बदलाव होंगे जिससे हिंदुस्तान को फायदा होगा या जिनकी हिंदुस्तान एडवांटेज ले सके? किस प्रकार से दुनिया बदलेगी आपके मुताबिक?
These kinds of incidents rarely have positive effects for any country, in general. But there are ways countries can take advantage of them. And what I think we can say is that there will have to be a rethinking of everything in the global economy once we are out of this. If there is opportunity for India, it is in shaping that dialogue, in being more of a leader in that dialogue, because it is not one of the two big warring parties, but is a big enough country to hear its voice, to have its voice heard in the global economy. In this situation, India can find opportunities for its industry, for its supply chains, but most importantly, it can try and mold the dialogue towards one which has greater place for more countries in the global order, a multipolar global order rather than a single or a bipolar global order.
Don't you think there's a crisis of centralization? That there is too much centralization of power taking place and the conversations are stopping? I mean, I think conversations would help a lot of these problems that you're talking about. But it sort of breaks down for some reason.
I do believe that decentralization is important both for bringing more local information to work, something we talked about earlier, but also about giving empowerment to the people. What you see across the world is a great sense of disempowerment. Decisions are being made elsewhere, not by me.
Yeah.
I have a vote, but that elects somebody in a far-off place. My local sort of panchayat or state government has less power. They don't feel they can, alter anything. And so they become prey to a different set of force. I would ask you the same question. I mean, do you see this whole, Panchayati Raj, which, Rajiv Gandhi your father brought back. What effect has that had, and has that been beneficial?
It's had a huge effect, but I'm sorry to say it's in retreat. So a lot of the forward movement on Panchayati Raj that had taken place, we are now moving back to a sort of bureaucratic, DM-based structure or a bureaucrat-based structure. And if you look at the southern states, they are doing a better job because they are actually more decentralized. And the northern states are centralizing power, and they're taking away power from the panchayats and the sort of grassroots organization.
The closer decisions are taken to people, the more ability they have to keep a check on those decisions. So I think it's an experiment worth doing.
But what do you think is causing this at a global level? Why do you think we are having this sort of massive centralization and stopping a conversation? What do you think there's a central cause, or do you think there are a number of?
I do think there is a cause, and I think it is the global markets. Right? There is a sense that if markets globalize, market participants, firms, for example, want to see the same rules everywhere. They want to see the same coordinating structure everywhere. They want to see the same government everywhere, because that then gives them confidence. That attempt at uniformity takes away power from the sort of local or national governments. Of course, in addition, there is the bureaucratic temptation to centralize. If I can grab the power, why not? And so that is a constant desire to, if you're providing funding to the states, here are the rules that you must obey in order to get this funding. Not, I will give you this funding, no questions asked, because I know you've also been elected, and you will have to have a sense of what is appropriate for you.
There's a new model also out, which is the authoritarian model, which is questioning the sort of liberal model, and it's a different way of doing work. And it seems to be more and more rising in more and more places. Do you think it's going to get pushed back?
I don't know because the central authoritarian model, the strong figure, in a world where you're powerless, is sometimes appealing. Especially if you can develop a personal rapport. With that figure, and you feel they believe in me, they care for the people. The problem with that is the authoritarian figure can develop their own sort of sense of, yes, I am the power of the people, and therefore whatever I say goes. My rules apply. Not the checks and balances, not the institutions, not the decentralized structure. Everything is going to go through me. The sort of historically, what has happened is that has put too much weight on that center. And eventually that collapses.
But clearly something has gone wrong with the global economic system. I mean, that's pretty clear, right? Would that be a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement, that it's not working for a lot of people. The growing inequality of incomes and wealth in developed countries is certainly a source of the concern. The precariousness of jobs, the so-called precariat, is another source of concern. You have these gig jobs without any sense of whether you will have income tomorrow. And of course, we've seen during the pandemic, many of these people don't have any support. They have lost out on both incomes as well as their safety net. Therefore, what we have today is both a problem of slowing growth. So we cannot dispense with markets. We do need growth. But we also have a problem of stuck or inadequate distribution.